got an email here. Also, you can email me, globalrealityshow@gmail.com, if you want to ask me a question in the show, globalrealityshow@gmail.com. It's globalrealityshow@gmail.com. Says, this is from Chris, Ghost in the Machine. That's a great album by the Police. Love your taste in music. I often think that some of these reptilian shapeshifter eye anomalies could be a sign of Caesar 3 mind control. I take it he's talking about some of these videos where the eyelids shift and people claim that it's, that it's, some sort of reptilian shapeshifter stuff. I've seen some of them that are obvious fakes, and I've seen other ones that, you're kind of like, well, you're seeing, essentially what you're seeing with this whole shapeshifter thing anyway, is you're seeing what a camera artificially picks up that the human eye oftentimes doesn't detect. Now, whether that is seeing into the essence of someone, seeing into their nature, who we are on the inside is oftentimes masked by our exterior appearance. And sometimes these things do outwardly manifest themselves. But I think what Chris is saying here is that could it be the sign of could this actually be, because of this remote mind control stuff that Caesar 3 is doing? It very well could be. Anything's on the table. Yeah, I would say that's plausible. He says that there are some that show holographic masking of the pupil, which look computerized. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've seen that too. There is definitely something weird going on, but don't have much faith in individuals pushing the shapeshifter theory like Ike. Maybe it's Project Bluebeam in operation. Certainly have me fooled. Seeing evidence on live TV a few times. Perhaps this is a Moonbat edition topic. Well, we're doing a Moonbat show right now, so you're in luck. Keep up the great shows. Cheers, Chris. Yeah, I've talked about the reptilian thing on my show many times through the years, and I'm happy to talk about it with you right now. I agree 100% with your assessment there that there is something to the whole reptilian thing, but it's not exactly what we're being told by people like Ike and others. Yeah, I would say that, Chris, you are 100% correct. That's exactly what I found in my years of research as well. Exactly that right there. And it was mind-blowing to me because it's one of those things, and I think it is one of those things that has been put out there by David Icke and others. And it's been put out there in a certain way so that it sounds so kooky and crazy and it becomes a meme and ha ha ha, oh, he's one of those reptilian believers, ha ha ha, this, all that, and the other. And anytime you see something like that becomes that big of a cultural meme, and people who don't know two shits of a motherfucker about any sort of information know about the reptilian shapeshifter theory. And it is deeper than just, some people will say, well, they just put that out there to poison the well, the pot of other researchers to make us all look like kooks. Maybe, but that's one explanation. These people don't do any operations unless they have a multiple tiered effect, folks. We got to stop this shit of getting hung up on one explanation and then thinking that one explanation encompasses everything there is to know about whatever particular topic you're talking about. That is a dangerous thing, and that is a mindset that's being pushed by the half-truth movement. There is definitely, I'll tell you, a great film to watch on that. Chris Everard's film, Secret Space 2. Secret Space Volume 2. Watch that film for a lot of the stuff with especially with the reptilian iconography. It's unbelievable how obsessed with reptilian iconography these bloodlines are. And of course, when you start to find out and you study the Sumerian mythos and you study the Sumerian text, and you find out about the bloodlines and the demigods and these extraterrestrials seeding life on this planet, and then the bloodlines being the ones that are in power, keeping mankind in this state of spiritual bondage and keeping us in torture and torment and war constantly to be able to rule over us. And that's when you start to find out that we have our only context. our only context for what consciousness, what we perceive consciousness to be, and what we humans perceive consciousness to be. We don't really consider a dog or a cat to be conscious, but they are conscious and they are aware of what's going on. But we don't consider anything intelligent in our known world, anything more intelligent than us because of our ability to think and speak and act the way we do. And because humans are the only creatures that we are aware of at this point that do speak and think and act the way that we do, we assume that we just don't have any reference point or context for what something else that has intelligence and speaks and whatever else have you, has a culture like we do, looks like. We have no reference point for that. And so what I believe is that these, whatever these gods, these reptilian gods, or the Anunnaki, they either A, took on the form of a serpent in their initial creation stages, and then essentially had the ability to be able to form skin to make them look human-like, almost very similar to what we've seen in the television series V, both the old one and the new one, something very similar to that, because inside of the Temple of Hathor at Dendera in Egypt, and this is a temple that not very many researchers or people, well, really the mainstream really talks about. I've searched high and low at bookstores, on Amazon.com. You know, I've looked and looked and looked for documentaries on the Temple of Hathor, Dendera. I've looked at for books upon it. And I can't find anything, and it is one of my goals as a researcher. One of my big long-term goals is I want to write a book and make a film. Both. I want to write a book and a film on the Temple of Hathor, Dendera. Fascinating place. And it gets largely ignored in Egyptology. They never talk about it. Why? Because it's the smoking gun. That's why. Now, it's interesting, in the new television series on the History Channel, the Ancient Alien series, in the background to the introduction to Ancient Aliens, they often show at the beginning of it, right as the titles are coming in before it goes into the first segment of the show, they oftentimes show the Temple of Hathor, Dendera, in the background. And I've been waiting and waiting and waiting. I've watched every episode of both seasons so far. And I've been waiting and waiting and waiting for them to discuss the Temple of Hathor, Dendera, and get into this stuff and talk about, you know, the connections to extraterrestrials and this, Hathor and this deity that supposedly has control over the Milky Way galaxy. And they never have. They've never talked about it. Mainstream dances around it. They go all the way around the Temple of Hathor, Dendera, and for me, there's many reasons why that is. There are quite a bit of interesting things out. First off, outside of the Temple of Hathor at Dendera, there are there's gigantic statues of pharaohs and all of the great Egyptian leaders. And I'll put some pictures in the chat room for those of you that are listening live tonight and you're in the chat room. I'll give you a little interactive slideshow here. The first picture there, so you can kind of get an idea of just how big of a scale we're talking about here at the Temple of Hathor. There is the first picture. There is the entrance to the Temple of Hathor, and you can go there to this day and take tours and whatnot. But you can see the scale of those pictures of humans, or normal size regular humans, us, to those giant statues. Now, let me go through here. I'll try to go through this as best I can. And we're still talking about the subject. This is why I'm still talking about this on the subject of reptilians that the listener emailed me about and brought up. So just to let you know what we're still talking about, this still does relate to my point about reptilians and how it's not what they've told us that it is through shapeshifters and all the rest of this stuff. It's more like the fact that you have consciousness, which is trying to, I think in the olden days, mask its true identity in order that it could have slaves that would do their bidding without thinking that they were demons and devils and monsters and everything else. Now, there's a picture here that I'm trying to find to show you next. It's very interesting. It's a pillar inside of the Temple of Hathor. What's interesting is that those giants there in that picture that I put in the chat room a minute ago, that's to scale. What I mean is there are pillars inside of the Temple of Hathor that are the same size as those statues, right? So when you see, there's a picture of this gentleman standing at the foot of one of these pillars, and he looks the same size as he would be standing up against one of those giant pharaonic statues outside. This thing is built to the scale of giants. Yeah, I've got the pictures. Let me handle that. Thanks. But you've got there's a zodiac wheel inside of it. It predates astrology, but I don't know how many thousands of years. And that's at the roof of the Temple of Hathor. And there you also have these depictions of strange humanoids and smaller sized humans walking and working alongside giant figures. And this is depicted inside of the Temple of Hathor as well. Now, what's interesting about that is that, as I said, the building is built to the scale of giants. This thing is built to house very gigantic, large people. Intricate details painted on the ceiling, way high up there. They didn't have the technology to do, but they show these small, what appear to be worker humans working alongside giants, and also these robotic looking figures. One of them actually literally looks like a robot. And I'll put a picture of it in there in the chat room for you. And you can actually see this. You see these two little figures. They both have this big cylindrical object on their head with a snake inside of it. And at the end of it is a lotus bud. And you'll see two Egyptian-looking smaller humanoids holding up these gigantic machines with this little robot. That's what it looks like. It looks like a robot. It's like a spring that's holding the weight of this large object, but it has arms. It's like a fucking robot. And then you have the giants next to it. Well, down the way from that particular picture in the Temple of Hathor, you see the snake coming out of the end of that large object. And at the end of the snake is a lotus bud. And then a little ways down from that, you see that the bud has opened up. The lotus bud has blossomed. And out of it comes the uraeus. And the uraeus is, of course, the upright serpent. Now, this is what I believe, and what many other researchers believe, depicts are these, whatever these high energy devices that these giants are getting the slaves to help them use, are using some sort of energy to create physical plane entities. Now, whether it's energy that they're harnessing to open up a portal or a wormhole to bring these things through, or whether they're creating material bodies out of scratch out of this technology, I don't know for sure. But you see it blossom and grow, and you start to get the idea that this is some sort of replication process. And that this was some, again, there's a lot of evidence to support that different extraterrestrial races have been either marooned on this planet, ran out of fuel, got stuck here, and then used the indigenous populations for genetic experiments to essentially create worker races to help these extraterrestrials fix their technology so they can leave the planet again. And then, of course, this is how religions are seeded, bloodlines are seeded. And I think that the whole reptilian shapeshifter thing, while there may be very well something to it, I think that is a leftover artifact, a genetic imprint, a blueprint that probably all of us have a little bit of, or all of us have inside of us to some degree. Now, if you're one of these bloodline family members, or you're like a Phyllis Schlafly type who's a Merovingian blue blood on both sides of her family, Stewart bloodline, Bruce bloodline. Of course, you're going to have it more than others. And I think that that's probably what we're seeing, is we're seeing an aspect or an element of that. But I really think that even more, aside from the shapeshifter thing, I think the whole reptilian thing boils down to the fact that these people in these bloodlines that are the presidents and the war makers and the people who are the kings and the queens and the nobles and the people who run the think tanks and the banks and everything else and are in the priest class, you know, the demigods, they were put in the positions of power because of their bloodlines. And in order for us to never really get to that fact and to find out how many of these people are actually out there and how they are enslaving mankind and how we are enslaved to something that, and by something that didn't originate on this planet, not just a shadowy New World Order elite that are, you know, humans like us. That's why this whole David Icke reptilian shapeshifter thing was concocted in the first place. It was concocted and put out there so that we never find out that there is verifiable evidence that points in the direction that something that resembled snakes and serpents did some genetic manipulation and seeded life on this planet. Now, when you go back to those little reptilian statues that go back to the Ubaid period prior to Samaria and Iraq, ask yourself why special forces, when they blew the doors off the Iraq National Museum in 2003, ask yourself, why was it that those things were so important? You know, 5,000-year-old clay statues. I don't know. Didn't it say that God made man out of clay? Yeah. They were looking for genetic material is what they were looking for. You know, these things have, one of them has a Masonic apron on. I shit you not. They're holding a notepad. Other one's got a baby. These are reptilian statues. Prior to Samaria, Ubaid Empire. Gone. Special forces. Nobody knows where they went, where they are, what happened to them. Why was that so important? Why was that the most important thing to go in and get after the invasion in 2003? You see, there's something to this. And again, this whole reptilian shapeshifter thing and this idea of getting us, you know, thinking, oh, well, that's just that David Icke and that's just crap. Well, is it really, or is it just, again, another what? Half truth. That's, I'm telling you, folks, that's why I've been calling this the half-truth movement now. They're giving you half of the story, but most people stop there and don't go any further and realize that there's a lot more to it. And that was really just the cliff notes, what I gave you. Do your own research on this, man. I'm just trying to give you a little foothold of some stuff you can hit and look at and research and find out for yourself what you think on it. You know, if you want to think reptilian shapeshifters are real, fine. I have no problem with that. In fact, I don't necessarily cut that out of the spectrum totally. But what I think is, from my research, personally, I believe that what it is that that's been put out there to keep us from finding out that we are being ruled over by a genetic hierarchy. This is a hierarchy that's based on genetics. It's based on these bloodlines interbreeding and keeping their bloodlines pure. And this is what has allowed them to rule over us for this long and to keep this thing in place. And if we expose these bloodlines and we expose who and what they really are, which appears to not be human, and it catches steam and it spreads all around the world and the proof comes out, they're going to be in trouble. So what a better thing to do than concoct this whole, you know, reptilian shapeshifter story, and then, you know, people just think it's horseshit and they never look any further into it. But like, just with it, you know, as with anything else, you know, do your own research, find out what you think about it, and draw your own conclusions there. But I don't mind talking about that kind of stuff when it's brought up, because, you know, it's one of those topics where I just don't feel the need to. I'm not going to get up here and go, today we are going to be talking about reptilians. All right. You know, I just don't do that. But I do appreciate when people do, you know, ask me about particular topics, and then I'll give you my honest answer based on my own research and stuff. And I do like that. So thank you for bringing that topic up, because I think it is one that many people are interested in. And I think there is something to it. I think that we, you know, there's it's an open investigation. There's more to be known on it, but I don't think the whole thing's bullshit. I think there is something to it. Totally what that is, 100%, you know, we don't know right now. But I can tell you this: I do think it warrants more investigation. I do think it warrants more looking into the iconography, the terminology that relates to things like the Anunnaki and the serpent gods, and there's just this there's this overwhelming serpent iconography that pops up everywhere. The Brotherhood of the Serpent, the Brotherhood of the Snake, the first secret society ever set up. That relates to Enki, from the Sumerians, the Anunnaki. This person who was the scientist who was doing the genetic manipulations. I mean, there's a lot to it. There really is. There really is a lot to it, and there's a lot more to it than George Bush and Dick Cheney and Barack Obama shapeshift to 8-foot blood drinking reptiles behind closed doors, and their jaws unhinged, and they drop fucking gerbils and rodents in there. That's horseshit. That's the kind of crap that's put out there, so you never really find out what the real core issue of it is. And the core issue of it is we have snakes running the planet. That's really what it boils down to. These guys are fucking snakes, aren't they? They are. And I think we say that term, oh, these guys are fucking snakes. No, really. Who was it that said that? Princess Diana, wasn't it? You seen that quote, right? Where she says, I'm not even kidding. She says, the British royal family are a bunch of snakes. No, really. I mean, really. They really are snakes. She said that. She said, no, I'm not using that term, derogatorily. I'm saying really, they really are snakes. That was a direct quote from Princess Diana. Yeah. And then you know what they did to her. Oh man, I heard that. I was freaked out. I heard that, and I actually saw that book not too long ago, where that quote was in it, where she actually said that. Man, because you get it, you're like, damn, that's what she really said. She's like, no, really, I mean, really, they are snakes. They really are snakes. Really, like literally snakes. Man, oh man. All right, globalrealityshow@gmail.com if you want to email any questions into the broadcast, and I'll do my best to get to them.